Snoop Dogg, turned away from a high-end restaurant, ignites a cultural uprising. See how a denied dinner birthed the Unity Feast movement. Like, subscribe, and comment to be part of the change. The warm New York City evening buzzed with life as Snoop Dogg leaned back in the leather seat of his Cadillac Escalade. The rhythmic hum of the city provided the perfect backdrop for what should have been a celebratory night. A new album, glowing reviews, and a tight-knit group of friends ready to toast to success. Everything was set for a perfect evening. He glanced at his phone where a text from his manager and longtime friend Marcus lit up the screen. Marcus: "We're outside the restaurant, man. Can't wait for this spot you picked." Snoop chuckled to himself and replied, "Hold tight, I'm pulling up now." His longtime crew deserved this evening. They'd been with him through thick and thin. Studio sessions that stretched into dawn, endless tours, and the grind of the industry. Tonight was about relaxation, gratitude, and a chance to reconnect. As he pulled into the valet stand of Lux Dining, the exterior radiated exclusivity with minimalist decor, polished glass, and a quiet sophistication that screamed for the elite. Snoop stepped out, adjusting his fitted suit, and spotted his friends Marcus, Leah, and a couple of younger protégés from his label waiting near the entrance. "Snoop Dogg in the building!" Marcus exclaimed, pulling him into a hearty handshake-turned-hug. The crew laughed, exchanging inside jokes and playful ribbing as they approached the restaurant's grand double doors. Inside, the ambiance was nothing short of opulent. Chandeliers cast warm light over polished mahogany tables, and the subtle hum of soft jazz filled the space. Waitstaff moved with practiced grace, dressed in sharp uniforms. Snoop was no stranger to luxury, but even he felt the weight of the restaurant's curated sophistication. Approaching the hostess stand, Snoop flashed his signature grin. "Reservation for dog, party of 6? The hostess, a young woman with a sleek ponytail and an air of practiced detachment, glanced at her computer. Her expression faltered slightly before she straightened and said, "One moment, sir." Leah leaned toward Snoop, whispering, "She looked at us like we just crashed the place." Snoop shrugged, probably just verifying you know how these spots are. Minutes passed before the hostess returned, her demeanor colder than before. "I'm sorry, Mr. Dogg, but it seems there's been an error with your reservation. We don't have a table available tonight." The mood shifted instantly. Marcus frowned, crossing his arms. "Hold up, that can't be right. We called ahead, confirmed it this morning." The hostess avoided eye contact. "Unfortunately, we are fully booked this evening. I apologize for the inconvenience." Leah stepped forward, her frustration palpable. "Fully booked? We just walked by and saw open tables? What's really going on here?" The hostess's lips pressed into a tight smile. "Those tables are reserved for other guests." The air around them grew tense. Snoop kept his composure but felt a familiar anger bubbling beneath his cool exterior. "Look, I get it, mistakes happen, but we've had this booked for weeks. Can you check again?" Before she could respond, a man in a tailored suit emerged from the back, his confident stride and smug expression revealing his position of authority. "Is there an issue here?" he asked. Though his tone suggested he already knew, Snoop turned to him. "Yeah, apparently our reservation doesn't exist anymore. Mind explaining how that happened?" The man's smile was cold, calculated. "Mr. Dogg, I apologize for any confusion, but we must adhere to our reservation policy. Tonight, we are at capacity." Marcus bristled, his voice rising. "You're seriously turning away Snoop Dogg? You know who this man is?" The manager's condescension was razor-sharp. "We treat all our guests equally here, sir." Snoop felt the stares of other diners. Whispers rippled through the restaurant as people began to recognize him. The humiliation burned hotter. This wasn't about a mistake. It was about something deeper, uglier. "Let's go," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Snoop, with Leah and the rest, exited the restaurant, their celebratory mood shattered. Outside, the city lights seemed colder, harsher. Snoop took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger that churned in his chest. He had faced plenty of challenges in his life, but this felt personal. It wasn't just about a reservation, it was about what he represented. As they piled into the car, the silence was heavy. No one knew what to say. Leah was the first to break it. "This isn't right." We can't just let them get away with this. Snoop nodded, his jaw tight. Oh, we won't. Trust me, we won't. The car rumbled to life, carrying them away from the polished facade of Lux Dining. As they drove through New York City, the hum of traffic outside barely registered. Snoop stared out the window, his mind racing. This wasn't the first time he'd faced this kind of subtle, insidious racism. It wasn't just about being a celebrity. It was about being black in a world that still placed limits on where you could belong. By the time they reached Leah's place in Brooklyn, the tension in the car had only grown. You know what you have to do, she said before stepping out, her words hanging in the air long after she closed the door. When Snoop finally arrived home, the silence was deafening. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from his friends, social media notifications, and a flurry of messages from fans who had already caught wind of what happened. He sat in his living room, staring at his phone. The anger had settled into something sharper. Resolve. He knew he couldn't let this slide. Not for himself, not for his friends, not for his community. Finally, he opened the camera app and hit record. Tonight, he began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. Something happened that I can't ignore. As he spoke, the weight of the night poured out. This wasn't just about one incident. It was about a lifetime of being told where he did and didn't belong. It was about everyone who had ever been humiliated, excluded, or made to feel lesser because of their skin color. When he finished, he uploaded the video with a single caption. It's time for change. The video was live, and Snoop knew there was no turning back. The following morning, Snoop Dogg woke up to the relentless buzzing of his phone. His notifications were exploding. Fans, friends, and even strangers had flooded his social media with comments, messages, and reactions to the video he had posted the night before. He sat up in bed, scrolling through the responses, each one bringing the events of the previous evening back with sharper clarity. This is exactly why we can't stay silent, read one comment. They think they can treat us however they want because we're black, said another. Some messages were from people sharing their own experiences, stories of being turned away, ignored, or humiliated in restaurants, stores, and public spaces simply because of the color of their skin. The words were raw and painful, each one a reminder that what had happened to him was far from unique. By midday, the video had gone viral. Clips of his speech had been reposted on every platform imaginable. Headlines screamed for attention, placing Snoop Dogg at the center of a growing wave of outrage. Lux Dining's name was now attached to accusations of racism, and the restaurant's Instagram page was inundated with angry comments and one-star reviews. It wasn't just a backlash, it was a reckoning. Marcus called, his voice alive with a mix of anger and excitement. Bro, have you seen this? Your video is everywhere. People are pissed. I'm talking full-blown boycott levels of pissed. Snoop rubbed the back of his neck, still trying to process the magnitude of the response. I've seen it. People are sharing their stories, man. It's bigger than just me. That's what I'm saying, Marcus replied. This isn't just about last night. It's about all the nights people like us got turned away, disrespected, made to feel like we don't belong. This is the moment we got to do something. Snoop leaned back in his chair, staring out the window. The city was alive as always, but today it felt different. There was a fire burning beneath the surface, a collective anger ready to ignite. You're right, he said, but it can't just be about calling them out. We need to show them what we're about, build something that can't be ignored. Marcus's voice crackled with energy. Say the word and I'm in, whatever it takes. After the call ended, Snoop sat in silence, his mind racing. He thought about the countless moments in his life when he had faced the same quiet discrimination, the side glances, the extra scrutiny, the unspoken rules that told him he didn't belong. It was exhausting, but this time he wasn't alone. This time, people were listening. Leah arrived at his house later that afternoon, her face set with determination. You've seen the comments, right? People are fed up. We can't let this momentum die. Snoop nodded, motioning for her to sit. I know. Marcus has been blowing up my phone, talking about boycotts and rallies. Leah leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Forget boycotts, forget protests. We've done all that before, and it only gets us so far. What if we create something? Something that shows we don't need their tables because we've got our own. Snoop tilted his head, intrigued. What are you thinking? A dinner, Leah said, her voice gaining momentum. But not just any dinner. A night that celebrates us, our culture, our food, our music. We bring together the best chefs, the best artists, and we make it something they can't ignore. Call it Unity Feast? The phrase hung in the air for a moment, and then Snoop smiled. It was perfect. Unity Feast, he repeated. Yeah, I like that. They spent the next hour sketching out the basics of the idea. The dinner would be more than a response to Lux Dining's exclusion. It would be a statement, a celebration of everything the restaurant had tried to deny them. As Leah rattled off ideas for chefs and venues, Snoop's mind raced ahead. This wasn't just about one event. It was about creating something lasting, something that could inspire others to do the same. By evening, word of the planned dinner had already begun to spread. Leah's post on social media had been shared thousands of times, with people tagging their favorite chefs, musicians, and artists. The excitement was palpable. People were hungry, not just for food, but for a space where they could be seen and celebrated. Marcus called again, his voice barely able to contain his excitement. Man, I just saw Leah's post. People are hyped. We've got chefs volunteering, musicians offering to perform, even artists wanting to donate pieces. This thing is blowing up already. Snoop grinned, his chest swelling with pride. Good. Let's show them what we're about. But even as the excitement built, there was pushback. Late that night, Lux Dining released a statement. It was filled with the usual corporate buzzwords: misunderstanding, commitment to diversity, and an apology for any inconvenience caused. But the tone was hollow, and it only fueled the fire. People saw through the carefully crafted words, and the backlash intensified. Leah texted him the statement with a single comment. They're scared. Good. Snoop stared at the message for a long time, the words resonating in his mind. They were scared, and they should be. This wasn't just about one night of exclusion. It was about decades of systemic racism, about a society that had long decided who deserved a seat at the table and who didn't. He put his phone down and stared out the window at the city lights. A part of him wanted to let the anger consume him, to lash out and watch them burn. But another part, the wiser part, knew that wasn't the answer. This wasn't just about tearing something down. It was about building something better. Snoop knew the path forward wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, resistance, and criticism. But he also knew they had the power to make something meaningful, something that would last. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning, Snoop Dogg sat at his kitchen table in his Harlem apartment, a cup of coffee in hand, staring at the notebook in front of him. His mind was alive with ideas, each one more ambitious than the last. The phrase Leah had coined the day before, Unity Feast, felt like more than just a clever name. It was a declaration, a rejection of the gatekeeping that had defined places like Lux Dining. This was about creating a space where everyone, no matter their background, could feel valued and celebrated. As he jotted down notes, his phone buzzed incessantly. Texts, emails, social media notifications. His world was ablaze with people offering support, sharing their stories, and asking how they could get involved. The momentum was undeniable, and Snoop knew they had to act quickly to channel it into something concrete. Leah arrived just after noon, her laptop under one arm and an energy drink in hand. She didn't bother with small talk, jumping straight into action. I've been talking to a couple of chefs. They're in, and not just for the food. They want to help with everything. Promotions, decorations, the whole 9 yards. Snoop leaned back in his chair, a slow grin spreading across his face. That's what I'm talking about. This ain't just about food. It's about showing the world what we can do when we come together. They spent the next few hours brainstorming. Leah had connections with musicians who could perform, while Snoop had relationships with artists and creatives across the city. The vision began to take shape. A night that would celebrate not just black culture, but the diversity of New York itself. By mid-afternoon, Marcus arrived, his energy as infectious as ever. All right, y'all, he said, clapping his hands together. I've been working the phones. We've got some big names interested. A couple of venues in the meatpacking district are open to hosting, but we'll need to move fast. This thing is blowing up. Snoop raised an eyebrow. Big names like who? Marcus grinned. You'll see. Let's just say they'll get people talking. The three of them worked late into the evening, hammering out details. They decided to host the event in a converted warehouse in the meatpacking district, a raw industrial space that could be transformed into something magical. It was the perfect blank slate, a place that could reflect the creativity and resilience of the community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Snoop leaned back in his chair, exhausted but energized. This ain't just a dinner, he said, his voice thoughtful. It's a statement. We're showing them that we don't need their approval. We're building something better. Leah nodded, her eyes shining with determination. And we're doing it our way. By the time Marcus left, the plan was well underway. They had a venue, a growing list of chefs and performers, and a clear vision. All they needed now was to make it happen. In the following days, Leah and Marcus worked tirelessly to finalize the logistics while Snoop used his platform to promote the Unity Feast. He posted videos on social media talking about the importance of community and inclusion. Each post was met with an outpouring of support as well as stories from people who had faced similar discrimination. One story, in particular, stuck with him. A young woman named Annika shared how she and her family had been turned away from a different restaurant in Queens the year before, despite having a reservation. She described the humiliation of standing there with everyone staring and the quiet resignation of walking away, knowing there was nothing they could do. Snoop read her words aloud to Leah and Marcus during one of their late-night planning sessions. "This is why we're doing this," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It ain't just about what happened to us, it's about all of them." The night before the event, the warehouse in the meatpacking district was a hive of activity. Chefs unpacked their supplies, setting up makeshift kitchens along one wall. Tables were arranged in long rows, covered in crisp white linens and adorned with simple floral arrangements. String lights hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the space. Musicians rehearsed on the small stage at the far end of the room, their melodies filling the air. Snoop stood in the center of it all, taking it in. This was what he had envisioned, a space that felt both elegant and welcoming, where people could come together and feel at home. Marcus joined him, hands on his hips as he surveyed the scene. "Man, this is something else. You think they're ready for this?" Snoop smiled, his gaze steady. "They ain't ready, but they're about to be." Leah appeared moments later, clipboard in hand. "Everything's on track. The chefs are good, the performers are set, and we've got people lined up to document the whole thing." "Good," Snoop said. "This ain't just about tonight. We need to show the world what we're about." As the final touches were added, Snoop took a moment to himself. He stepped outside, the cool night air a welcome relief after the bustling activity inside. He thought about all the people who had supported him, who had shared their stories and poured their hearts out in the comments of his posts. This was for them. It was also for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, for every kid who had been stared at in a store, for every family who had been turned away at a restaurant, for every person who had felt the sting of quiet, insidious racism. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a revolution. Tomorrow they would show the world what Unity Feast really meant. The evening finally arrived. The once bare industrial warehouse in the meatpacking district had been transformed into a luminous haven of culture, art, and celebration. The string lights overhead bathed the room in a golden glow, while long tables covered in white linen stretched across the space. Fresh flowers and candles adorned every table, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and inviting. The air was filled with the tantalizing aromas of diverse cuisines, blending together into a symphony of spices and flavors. Guests began to trickle in, greeted personally by Snoop Dogg and his closest friends. Each person who walked through the doors was met with warmth and gratitude, their presence a testament to the power of community and resilience. Some were well-known figures, artists, activists, chefs, while others were everyday people who had simply been moved by the message. They all shared one thing: the experience of being excluded, overlooked, or diminished in spaces where they should have felt welcome. The energy in the room was electric, a palpable mix of excitement and anticipation. People mingled, laughing and talking as they took in the vibrant art displayed along the walls. Every piece told a story, each one contributed by an artist who wanted to be part of this moment. From bold paintings celebrating Black culture to photographs capturing quiet moments of resilience. The art was as diverse as the crowd it adorned. Snoop stood near the entrance, his sharp suit tailored to perfection, watching as the room filled. Marcus joined him, holding a glass of wine. "You see this?" Marcus said, gesturing to the buzzing crowd. "This is what it's all about." Snoop nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, man. This is bigger than us. Look at all these people coming together for something real." At the far end of the warehouse, a small stage had been set up for the evening's performances. The lineup included musicians, spoken word artists, and even a comedian who had volunteered to perform. Snoop had insisted that the entertainment reflect the diversity and talent of the community, and the performers had delivered in spades. As the last guests arrived, Leah took the stage to welcome everyone. Her crimson dress flowed as she walked across the platform, her voice commanding yet warm. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her words amplified by the microphone. "Tonight we come together not just to share a meal, but to make a statement. We're here to celebrate who we are, where we come from, and the beauty of our community. This isn't just a feast, it's a movement." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers filling the vast space. Snoop watched from the side, his chest swelling with pride. Leah had a way of capturing the moment, of putting into words what so many were feeling. The dinner began shortly after. Chefs emerged from their stations, bringing out dishes that reflected the rich tapestry of cultures present in the room. Caribbean jerk chicken, Southern biscuits and gravy, Senegalese thé bourguignon, and other culinary masterpieces were placed on the tables. Each dish told its own story. The guests marveled at the flavors, savoring every bite while exchanging stories and laughter. Snoop moved from table to table, greeting guests and listening to their experiences. At one table, an older man shared how he had been refused service at a diner in Brooklyn decades ago. "Tonight," the man said, his voice thick with emotion, "this feels like healing, like we're finally being seen." At another table, a young woman spoke about how she had hesitated to come, unsure if she would feel out of place. "But being here," she said, "it's like I finally belong somewhere." The words resonated with Snoop. This was exactly what he had envisioned, a space where people could come together without fear of judgment, where they could celebrate their heritage and their humanity. As the evening progressed, the performances began. A spoken word artist took the stage, her voice ringing out with raw power as she recited a poem about resilience and defiance in the face of racism. The crowd hung on every word, their applause thunderous by the end. A jazz band followed, their smooth melodies creating a backdrop of soulful joy. Leah joined Snoop at one of the tables, her face glowing with pride. "Can you believe this?" she asked, looking around at the room. "We actually did it." Snoop nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Yeah, we did. And this is just the beginning." Marcus approached with a bottle of champagne, grinning from ear to ear. "I say we toast to that? To the beginning of something bigger than any of us." The three clinked their glasses, the sound lost in the sea of laughter and conversation that filled the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, Snoop felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not for his music, not for his fame, but for something that truly mattered. The highlight of the evening came when Snoop himself took the stage. The room fell silent as he stepped up to the microphone, his presence commanding yet humble. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of everyone gathered before him. "Tonight," he began, his voice steady and filled with emotion, "we proved something. We proved that we don't need their approval to know our worth. We don't need their tables to feel like we belong. We built our own feast, and let me tell you, this feast, it's for everybody." The applause was deafening, the energy in the room reaching a crescendo. People stood, clapping and cheering, their faces alight with hope and pride. Snoop raised a hand to quiet the crowd, his next words carrying even more weight. "This ain't just about one night. It's about changing the game, about making sure that no one, no matter where they come from or what they look like, ever feels like they don't belong. We're just getting started with the Unity Feast movement. The cheers erupted again, the room electrified by his words. Snoop stepped down from the stage, his heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and resolve. He knew this night would be the first of many. As the evening wound down, people lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of the space they had created together. Snoop stood near the exit, shaking hands and hugging guests as they departed. Each thank you and word of encouragement reaffirmed the importance of what they had done. When the last guest had left, Snoop stood in the now empty warehouse, the echoes of the night still reverberating around him. Leah and Marcus joined him, their faces tired but triumphant. "We did it," Leah said softly, her voice filled with emotion. Snoop nodded, his gaze steady. "Yeah, and now we keep going." Disclaimer: all stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. We advocate for a world where everyone has equal rights under the law and where society continues to grow in fairness, development, and civilization. Our goal is to share heartwarming stories that contribute to making life better. Any resemblance to real events, individuals, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories are not meant to reference any actual people, events, or entities, and contain no political or religious connotations.